Financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
The possibility of a collapse of the European Union ahead of the June 23rd Brexit, the vote that the UK will take to formally leave the European Union. Now, first, let me just give you my opinion on what I think is going to happen in June 23rd. I think it's going to be the same thing that we saw happen with the Scottish independence vote, where it never happened, where the vote took place, but it was they lost, those that wanted independence from the UK. And there's all kinds of claims and reports that were out there regarding MI5, MI6, rigging the votes, all kinds of vote rigging, ballot counting errors, you name it. And I think that's what's going to happen here again. I really doubt, even in spite of what appears new polls show that there is a shift towards people looking to want to leave the EU, that I think the powers that be will control these votes, similar to what we've seen take place in the Democratic primary, for example, where there's no question, at least in my mind, and I don't have any factual evidence, but it's just my gut tells me that the Democratic Party and their surrogates are basically screwing someone like Bernie Sanders out of several close primaries that could have gone either way. Now, of course, I'm not voting for either one of those candidates, nor do I support either one of them. But what I do support is that the right to free elections and elections that actually people's votes do count. So here's the thing that I find interesting is that the scare tactics for those, I mean, look, 20 years ago, if you talked about the New World Order, you would be considered a racist, a conspiracy theorist, a hate monger. Today, it's obviously all out in the open. I mean, they openly talk about a New World Order, and this idea really, you could kind of swap New World Order with people that refer to themselves, like, for example, John McCain, as internationalists. That's what Barack Obama is. That's what Hillary Clinton is. That's what Bernie Sanders is. That's what John McCain is. That's what a ton of Republicans are, like George Bush, Karl Rove. They are internationalists. That's why there is no difference, ladies and gentlemen, in the foreign policy between, let's say, somebody like a Mitt Romney and a Hillary Clinton. That's why there's no difference in the vote to want to bail out the big banks between a Hillary Clinton and a Mitt Romney or a George Bush. They all believe really in the central key points of internationalism, crony capitalism, and really this fascistic corporatism is what we basically see, which is really what Hillary Clinton is. She's a corporatist, as are leading Republicans as well. So they're freaked out, right? Because they see people are waking up. People in Europe, people in America, you see what the left-wing media recently refers to as the rise of right-wing parties. Well, really, I don't necessarily think someone's right-wing because they want to have sovereignty in their country, because they don't want their country flooded by the Trojan horse of these refugees, when the truth is it's military-age men, by the truckloads being brought in. And this isn't just in the EU, of course, they're being brought into the United States as well. And most recently, just over the weekend, reports where, again, people were talking about this several years ago, and they're like, this is totally crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist, where now it's open, the Washington Post, talking about Department of Homeland Security busing in illegals, dropping them off in different cities. TB rates are exploding. A third of illegals that were dropped in Vermont had tuberculosis. I mean, it's absolute insanity. And people in the UK realize what's going on. People in Germany see what's going on. Their countries are being flooded by illegals that do not, or by these so-called refugees that do not want to assimilate to the culture. And that is people talk about how America was built on immigration, and it's absolutely true. And the immigrants that came over in the 1920s, 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the majority of them wanted to become American. Now, I'll acknowledge fully, look, my kids go to school in the Los Angeles School District, and I see the children of illegals that are Americanized. And they're Americanized, and they, love all the stuff that my kids love. So there is that assimilation that takes place as well. But the fact of the matter is that the illegals that come to America today are way below the poverty line. And studies have shown it will take 3 to 4 generations for them to get out of poverty. So we're not bringing in the best and brightest like we should be. We're bringing in anyone who wants to come in. Anyone, criminals, you name it. And that's exactly what's happening in the EU. And that's why the UK is saying, look, this is absolute insanity. A majority of people recognize and realize that having the EU pass laws, unelected bureaucrats pass laws for their country where they don't even get a vote. They don't even get a say in this. Now, the scaremongers, of course, are saying that if a Brexit does happen, the pound will collapse, the UK economy will collapse, and it'll be totally over. This is the same scare tactics they used for those that wanted to not accept bailout terms for Greece and Greece leaving the EU, which could have been one of the best things that has happened. Remember, in the last 5 years, Greece has had 3 different bailouts, and it's been absolute insanity. If they would have not taken the first bailout, they likely would have already rebuilt their economy based on their drachma, original currency, based around their shipping, based around their tourism industry, based around their hospitality industry, based around their mining industry. But instead, no, they go along with the bondage, this self-imposed bondage. The EU as well, listen, London is one of the financial capitals of the world. Okay, it's one of the insurance capitals of the world. They have oil, they have shipping, they have all kinds of things, tourism to build their economy off of. The notion that they now need the EU or that they're going to collapse is absolute insanity. The reason that they will collapse is because, not the reason they will collapse, the reason that if they do leave the UK, they'll see a crash likely in their economy and in their currency is not because anything other than the globalist puppets like David Cameron, who are in charge of running that country, that are scaring and fear-mongering the people, and so people will panic. If there was real leadership, they'd stand up and say, look, the EU was a project that we tested out. It has not worked. We need to reclaim our sovereignty. We need to reclaim the laws that we abide by, where we, as English people, pass these laws, or we, as members of the UK, pass these laws ourselves. They're not imposed upon us by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. We'll see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. Look, unfortunately, I'd love to sit here and say, look, I think this is going to pass. Unfortunately, I think the vote's already rigged. That's just what I think, right? So that's why I think that the votes in the US are rigged as well. So we'll see, though. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. What do you think will happen to the UK in the Brexit exit? Will their economy collapse? Today, the pound is at dropped over 1% against the dollar, which is weak as well, considering the helpless and hopeless jobs numbers that came out in March. Janet Yellen's coming out now and basically saying, they're not going to raise interest rates. It's a total horror show, okay? That's why one needs to focus That's why one needs to focus on our own financial and independent liberty. That's why we need to take a look at what we're doing, invest in ourselves, because you and I as individuals can prosper, can succeed, can make it past whatever agenda the New World Order has set for humanity. I'm Fabian for Liberty, Fabian Calvo. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, check out my webinars that I post on resourcefulrealestateacademy.com or on fabianforliberty.com as well. You can opt in anytime, and they're 3 times a day. Pretty cool. I've had thousands of people go through them in the last week since my interview with Greg Hunter, which worked out really well. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'm out.